Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to another episode of the Raw Prospect Podcast. My name is Emmy Nixon. Today is episode 196. We are covering the NBA season for the first time in a long time. We are starting the NBA season on Tuesday, which is extremely exciting. It's an amazing time of year to be a sports fan, obviously, and basketball is a big part of that. So we wanted to get something out before the start of the season to really get things going in terms of the basketball content on this channel, or really just the NBA content. We've already done some college basketball, but before we get into it, make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you have not already. If you're in the live chat, go ahead and give us a comment or two, give us some feedback, give us your thoughts, give us really whatever you want. We just want the engagement. And joining me from Houston, Texas, the Stat King himself, Mr. Michael Lean. How you doing?
You can hear the Altuve chants from way outside my apartment. Boy, did that feel weird as a Yankees fan watching Altuve hit a game go-ahead winning home run in the ninth inning. Today we're here to talk about the National Basketball Association. The season kicks off on Tuesday with two games. Can't remember what those games are right now. I'm going to look at the schedule real fast and see. Tonight's the last night of the preseason. We've got Lakers Nuggets Tuesday at 6:30 on TNT, and we've got Suns Warriors the nightcap at 9 Central on TNT. The most exciting part about the NBA coming back to me, though, is the fact that we're going to get to watch Ernie, Chuck, Shaq, and Kenny the Jet once again on Inside the NBA. That's always a pleasure. Okay, we have 5 burning questions. We're going to burn through them. Not like extremely quickly, but here in the next hour or so, we're going to make sure that we burn through them fast and efficiently. All right. What question do you want to start with here?
Let's start with a big picture type of question. One of them is, which team will be the next team to hit the reset button? And basically meaning that which team will go from looking to win to a full-on rebuild, trading away their players, having a fire sale, a la what we saw from the Utah Jazz a couple of years ago.
Man, there are a couple options here. I think we should go back and forth. I'm going to tell you my answer, but I'm not going to give you the whole explanation yet. My answer was the Chicago Bulls. Who is your team?
I had the Chicago Bulls as my team as well, but I also consider the Toronto Raptors as well. Losing Fred VanVleet in the offseason, just kind of another year of trying to make this big wing lineup work offensively. And the head coaching change is what they hope will help change that. But the big thing is, how much will it help? Like, what is the ceiling of this core, particularly with a Pascal Siakam who is 28 years old in the prime of his career and doesn't really fit the timeline of your other budding star in Scotty Barnes. So it's an interesting conversation surrounding the Raptors, and Raptors fans aren't going to like me mentioning them in this conversation, but it kind of just puts you in between a rock and a hard place, being in the bubble of being on the playoff, chase every year, but not quite being good enough to really contend.
Yeah, consider my answer the Chicago Bulls kind of I don't want to say a prediction, but maybe a forecast into the future. I think, well, first of all, the key here is timing. DeRozan is going to be a free agent after this upcoming season. He's 34 years old, so the Bulls have a decision to make. They either have to cash in their stock on DeRozan, or they got to make a decision to sign him to an extension, when after this season he's going to turn 35, or I think sometime during this season he's going to turn 35. I think moving off DeRozan would be the necessary first step in a process that would likely also see the Bulls try to deal Zach LaVine in that process and Nikola Vucevic for whatever they could get back for him. Although LaVine does have 4 years left on his deal. So we could also see the Bulls wait to shop him more profitably before the draft this upcoming summer, if they wanted to do so. The last thing I'll say is, I think this decision has kind of already been made for them. The end game has, I think they should. Their first choice should be, with the roster that they have, to see how many games they could possibly win with this nucleus. But ever since the seriousness of Lonzo Ball's knee injury, I don't know. They can either forge ahead with an expensive, say, not very good team or just average team, or they can, with some limited flexibility, or they can start over and hope they get lucky in the upcoming year's drafts, as 2025 and 2026 appear to be pretty loaded in the draft department.
Yeah, I agree with you on DeMar being the number one guy on the trading block. Um, the only guy on that roster that I wouldn't put on the trading block, if you ask Bulls fans, is probably Patrick Williams, and even then, I would still take the phone calls. He's not completely untouchable. He's shown signs of competence, but he's never put the consistency together. And a lot of that has been to do with injuries, but it's also been, a role thing as well. Not a lot of opportunity in an offense where he's surrounded by established stars and veterans. So I'd like to see if the Bulls were to go that route, what they do with Patrick Williams and where his career turns out, because he's a very intriguing player. The last thing I'll say is, out west, there's going to be a bloodbath and some tough decisions to make for a lot of basketball teams. We don't know who those will be yet, because as of right now, we have 12 teams that are going to be going all out to make the playoffs and, have successful seasons and push forward. But unfortunately, I think the two teams in the 11 and 12 spot for this year might have some tough decisions to make. I got to think of, if, say, the Timberwolves, or if somehow things go badly there, what decision will they end up making? Or New Orleans, if they have another year of getting plagued by injuries, at some point you got to ask yourself, like, what are we doing? And then the Clippers as well. There's so many different scenarios for that Clippers team, to where I don't know if really a full-on fire sale is really in the cards, but Kawhi and Paul George are free agents this year. And I don't know if paying them, both of them being on the wrong side of 30, is in the best interest of that franchise.
Yeah, the only part of that, though, is I believe they still owe some, if not a lot of their draft picks to the Oklahoma City Thunder,
right?
From that Paul George trade. So if they were you're right. If things go south this year, they have to consider doing something. But would they fully blow it up? That, I think, would be a tough decision, given that you don't have a whole lot of draft capital to rebuild this thing, at least in the near future, given the trades that you've made to try to win now.
Right.
So that could be an interesting, okay, we're in the second tax, Abram. We need to pull back a little bit to get ourselves out of this cap hell, if you will. But we're not going to fully hit the reset button.
Right. Okay.
We'll
Well,
see.
any other teams you want to mention?
I can't really think of any off the top of my head right now. But if I do think of a team, we can come back to this question.
Definitely. Yeah, this is a very open-ended conversation. It's part of the reason we chose it. Okay, so let's move on to our next question. I'll let you decide. What direction do you want to go in here?
I think we should just bounce around. We have another pretty open-ended question about the offseason. Maybe we can make that our middle question. It's about offseason moves in particular. But everyone likes to talk about the MVP race. So why not we just do this question? Who are your top 4 preseason MVP candidates? How do you want to go about this? Because I don't have a list ranked, but I think I have it in my head. So
Yeah, I don't have notes, but I have guys in mind. I'd say if I were to, throw names out right now, Devin Booker would be one that comes to mind. Outside of the top 3 that you typically would think of, obviously, when it comes to the MVP, at least in the last few years, which would be obviously Giannis and Jokic being the 2, and then the 3 and 4 spot for this particular question is where I think interesting conversations come in. But Devin Booker would definitely be one that I consider because if this Suns team, if things really click, I think a lot of it will be on Devin Booker's shoulders because they're doing this point guard Booker experiment. And if he really thrives in that role, um, he could be looking at an extremely huge season. On top of that, the 2 stars that they have brought in outside of Booker, Durant and Beal, have had injury problems in years past. So if those 2 guys miss time and Booker is able to keep this Suns team in the top 4, which I think he's capable of, to be fair, then I think Devin Booker could be in consideration.
absolutely. I have a weird feeling about Jason Tatum this year. There are some new rules implemented into the NBA. We talked about some of them over the course of the offseason. But the league now has this new 65 game requirement for most of the major awards that I think may knock some fringe MVP candidates out of the running. When you look at Giannis, he finished 3rd last season with 63 games played. So if he were to miss some time, or Jokic, say, doesn't play as much as he did last year, we haven't really seen Embiid cross that 65 game threshold on a consistent basis. He played 50. What did he play?
I think it was 59 games.
Yeah,
My head.
he played in the high 50s last year, but I think Tatum's durability might give him a leg up in this MVP voting. I think Boston could still be near the top of the East, definitely in the top 3. He nearly led the league in minutes a year ago, and I think he's young enough to where he can take on that load and take on big time playing time once again. And I think Boston could easily, in some situations, end up with possibly the best record in the East. And I think he's going to put up ridiculous numbers. So I think Jason Tatum has to be up there somewhere.
Definitely, yeah. He's, I think, a lock for top 5 in MVP if it were me, and definitely in consideration for those top 3 or 4 spots for sure. And really, with Boston, I think the big thing for me is the consistency with that team and with the moves that they made. I think that will those will help things. Obviously, with Drew coming in and bringing in Porzingis, they can get into that dribble handoff game. And I think Tatum hasn't really had a partner to run that dribble handoff game with. Porzingis is an underrated passer as well. I really do think he's going to thrive this year a little bit more. And one other thing is Joe Mazzulla came out and said that they want to get Jason Tatum playing in the post more. So on the few possessions that he played last year in the post, he was very efficient on a like really small sample size. But this year they're going to use that a lot more, and I think that will definitely help with the Celtics' consistency.
So we know who the top guys are. We know about Jokic. We know about Giannis. We know about Tatum.
Right.
We even know about Embiid. We'll see what happens with that Philadelphia situation. But we know when he's on the floor, he's putting up MVP numbers on a night in, night out basis. Who you mentioned Booker, which I agree with. I think he could definitely be a guy who we look at. What do you think about a guy like, say, SGA, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, in this
I could definitely see it. I mean, I think that coach in OKC is extremely underrated. Mark Dagnall, I believe it is. I'll learn it eventually because they'll be a lot more relevant this year. But SGA, I think, with the scoring numbers that he puts up on that efficiency, if they're a top 4 seed, he's got to be in consideration. I mean, he averaged 32 points per game last year without any type of, well, not without a 3-point shot, but without relying on a 3-point shot. So if he adds a little bit more of that this year, then we could see him jump up to even another level. On top of that, he's got a pick and roll partner in Chet Holmgren as well.
Yeah, his team got better this year with the addition of Chet. I think they could end up as like a top 4 seed in the West with their roster. I mean, Jalen Williams is becoming one of my favorite young players if he wasn't already. I think that
the wing Jalen Williams.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like Josh Giddey. I mean, I like Lou Dort. I like where this Thunder team is at. You add in Chet Holmgren, who's looked really, really good in preseason, and you look at Shea's numbers last year. He had a 27 player efficiency rating. I mean, that's up there in like the top 6 or 7 players in the league. He brings the intensity on the defensive end of the floor too. He averaged over a steal and a half last year and a block. He's a top scoring threat in the league. He has an ability to get to the free throw line, which I think is valuable in these MVP conversations because you have the ability to
that's implied offense.
Yeah. So I could definitely see, like, I think he might be my sleeper. Like, oh yeah, we come to March and he's in the top 4 of our MVP rankings at that point. I don't know if he could win the award. We'll see, but definitely I'd keep my eye out for SGA. What do you think about Luka?
I think for Luka, it really, for one, he's coming in shape. That helps. Well, presumably, he does look to be in better shape. Just from what I've seen from him in the preseason, he looks like he's worked off some of that. Let's call it baby fat, I guess. But the big thing also is health. That Mavericks team, they're going to be relying on some young guys to come in and perform well and give them good minutes, including Derek Lively, their 11th overall pick or whatever it was. So Luka is going to be, thrown into another season having to really carry this thing along with Kyrie. Obviously, Kyrie's going to help shoulder some of the load as well, but Luka is going to be on the ball. We know that, like, probably a little bit less than last year, but he's still going to be asked to do a lot. I don't know if I really have him up there as of right now for this season in particular, because I don't know where this Mavericks team is going to stand in that Western Conference. I do want to throw one question at you before we wrap this conversation up. In this scenario, what player would you throw in as a guy who wins the MVP in a Russell Westbrook type of fashion, where they're a lower seed but have such amazing numbers to where you can't deny what they did and have to give them the MVP? Who would you see in that type of scenario winning the award?
Ooh, that's a great question. But it's a question that's going to require me to think a little bit. How about we come back to that at the end of the episode so I don't have to think for 2 minutes?
Yeah. Sorry for putting you on the spot.
No problem. We can both think on that question for while we talk about other stuff. Okay. Let's go to our off-season question. This was an interesting one that we both kind of came up with. What is an overlooked off-season move? It can be a signing or a trade that could end up being what we're calling impactful. We know a lot happened in the offseason. We know what the big moves were, but we're talking about overlooked moves. So I guess it's kind of how you perceive an overlooked move. But where'd your brain go first on this question?
Well, the first player that pops in my head is the Warriors going in and picking up Dario Saric. I think he's a guy who just fits that team perfectly. At the center spot, he's going to come in and shoot the lights out. He's a career, I think, 38% three-point shooter. He's a fantastic passer as well. He's also a guy that you can trust in terms of if he gets the rebound, he can push the ball himself as well with his ball handling ability and skill. And within this Warriors offense, where there's a lot of movement and shooting and spacing, he's just going to fit right in right away and be, I guess, a Nemanja Bjelica type with that extra passing touch as well. He's going to be able to screen for Steph and Clay and all those guys and find them off of screens and find them on those open looks that we've seen Draymond Green do for so many years. And I just think Dario has that feel to find those open cutters that are going to be available in this Warriors offense.
Yeah, I like that answer. I definitely like that answer. There are a couple guys that came to my mind. This may surprise some people. I think Taurean Prince signing with the Lakers could end up being fairly impactful. Obviously, the Lakers to some were widely regarded as one of the clear winners of this offseason free agency period. They re-signed Austin Reeves. They brought back Hachimura and D'Angelo Russell on multi-year deals. And while they also made some other key additions with Gabe Vincent, who's coming off the finals run with Miami, and Jackson Hayes from New Orleans to add depth to their front line, I think one name that has flown under the radar is Taurean Prince, 6'7" wing whose three-point shooting I think will be a great fit alongside the likes of LeBron James and Anthony Davis. He's entering his 8th NBA season. He's a career 37% three-point shooter, which is plenty good. He's played the past 2 years in Minnesota, and he's coming off a season which he averaged 9 points, around 3 rebounds, 2 assists, and 1.4 three-pointers made per game on 38% shooting in just over 22 minutes per game. He's going to space the floor on offense, but he's a certainly capable perimeter defender, good size, length, and athleticism. The Lakers, were already a top defensive team in the Western Conference following last season's trade deadline. I think Prince will fit right in on that, on that end of the floor and with this Lakers team's identity. That might not be, a name that pops into most people's heads, but I like the move for the Lakers. I think it definitely can't hurt them, I don't think.
Yeah, definitely. He's had he's turned some heads in the preseason. Let's just say that he's hitting his threes at a really high clip. And I saw a meme the other day where it was Lakers fans, Rui Hachimura fans, and Jared Vanderbilt fans shaking hands over agreeing that Taurean Prince should be in the starting lineup, which I thought was pretty funny. But yeah, he's a really good fit just because anytime you're trying to win a championship, you need 3-and-D wings, especially when you're on a LeBron featured team. I guess not. I was going to say LeBron led, but it's really co-led now in LA, in my opinion. The next guy that I was thinking of was Kelly Oubre for the Philadelphia 76ers. The thing about the Sixers that I do think they improved was definitely their bench this offseason. They went out and, late in the offseason picked up a Kelly Oubre who's going to give them some scoring punch off the bench, and they haven't had that in years, really. They've been relying on guys like Shake Milton coming off the bench, Furkan Korkmaz, who even with his shooting prowess has become unplayable in playoff scenarios just because of how much he struggles on the defensive end. I think Kelly Oubre, he's going to be asked to spot up a little bit more than what he did with Charlotte. And he did struggle with that in Golden State. But at the same time, he is a really solid NBA scorer. And in a role as a six man, I think is perfect for him.
Yeah, I like that too. There are some other names. I'll throw some out, and if there's one that catches your eye, we can talk about it. If not, we can move on. One that's caught particularly my eye, and I think I've talked about it on some of our past NBA offseason episodes, was Obi Toppin being traded to Indiana. I don't know what the season holds for Indiana from a winning standpoint. I guess we'll have to see, but I think he can take advantage from the change of scenery. Traded from the Knicks for a pair of second-round picks. He showed flashes of the talent that made him a top 10 pick back in 2020. But with his time with the Knicks, he averaged under 15 minutes per game, 15.7 minutes to be exact last year. He's an elite athlete. Although 23% of his points do come in transition, I think he's a good fit for an Indiana squad that is young and plays fast. They were fifth in pace last year at about 102. What is that, possessions per game? And
Right.
they led the NBA in transition scoring. So he fits right in there. 27 points per game in transition for the Pacers. I don't know. Javon Carter signing with the Bulls could be interesting. He gives them a reliable point guard.
Playing that Patrick Beverly role,
Yeah.
definitely.
Seth Curry signed with the Mavericks. Can you think of any more? Tyus Jones was traded to the Wizards.
Yeah. Dante DiVincenzo on the Knicks, I think, is interesting. Another ball handler that they can trust, I think. Maybe he'll be more on the ball than he was with the Warriors as well. His shooting was really solid last year, and his defense was really solid. And I think he wasn't that great of a fit with the Warriors just because the Warriors had size issues, but you don't have those types of things on the Knicks. So he'll fit in well into the 2 spot there.
Absolutely. Okay. Anyone else that pops into your mind right now, or can we move on?
Maybe a Joe Ingles to the Magic, a veteran, a shooter. maybe won't play that much, but a presence in that locker room and another pick and roll ball handler as well.
Okay, I like that. All right. Bold prediction time. One bold prediction from each conference. You go first.
Well, my bold prediction for this year is that the Golden State Warriors will be the number one seed out west. Um, I think this Warriors team, they added depth in the offseason. That wasn't talked about enough, in my opinion. And this team just seems to fit a lot better than it did last year. We'll see how it goes on the court, but when it's Steph, Clay, and Draymond, obviously Draymond's going to be hurt the first few weeks of the season. Hopefully back soon, but the addition of Chris Paul, the addition of Dario Saric, as I mentioned, I think things will click a lot easier this year, and um, some of the lineups that they can go to once Draymond gets back, I think are really intriguing with, a lot of spacing and shooting on the floor, and they can get back to kind of playing fast and playing free.
Okay, who's this? Who will this surprise? Anybody that knows me as an NBA fan. Some will call this bold, others may not. But I think Victor Wembanyama, after only watching, what is it, him play in 3 preseason games, Victor Wembanyama is going to make the All-Star team in year 1. It's a bold prediction. Bold prediction.
It's bold. No. I think it's plausible though, based on what we've seen. I mean, I think just off defense alone, he's got to be considered. I mean, that steal that he had, where he's standing on the nail or just below the 3-point line, he takes one step and he's in the paint and he reaches down and gets a steal. I'm not sure who it was, but it's just ridiculous.
It would be perfect symmetry. That's number 1. 25 years ago, we all know what happened when they drafted Tim Duncan. Now, is Victor Wembanyama going to end up having the career of Tim Duncan? More likely than not, no, but possibly. I mean, he could. I don't know if the Spurs can win that many championships to put him up there, but just in terms of sheer,
impact,
he could. Defensive, the same defensive impact. He could definitely become more of a well-rounded scorer than Duncan was. But I think, don't let 1 or 2 bad summer league games, get you twisted. He's as unique as a basketball player as we've ever seen to enter the league. He's a rim-denying giant at one end with a guard's mentality and a guard's skill set at the other. That still needs to develop and fine-tune itself. He still needs to get stronger, but we've already seen him put on 10, 15 pounds of muscle in the offseason. Although you might not visually see it on his body, he has gotten stronger. I don't know. I think you talked about his defensive impact. I think the preseason has shown that he's just going to get better throughout the season. The thing is, I don't know how many games he's going to play.
Yeah.
And that's the only issue.
That's the only thing. Yeah. The thing that I find the most intriguing for Wemby is just the off-ball movement, him coming off of pin downs. I mean, he's the play style offensively has been. I mean, it's been 7-4 Kevin Durant, and whether the shots go in it or not, if he's that, it doesn't matter how strong he is at that point because you're not going to be able to guard the release point or just him getting into his jumper off of those spots. I didn't really foresee him being used that way this quickly. Just coming off of pin downs and playing more like a wing and guarding the four position. I didn't really see that, but I got to give credit to Pop there also, seeing his skill set and where he could be used the best. Because as a center, he was definitely going to be, out physical, I guess, is
Yeah.
one way you could put it.
hmm That's an interesting conversation. When we talk about the Spurs during the season, especially early on, I still don't know how Pop is going to run that rotation. Whether he's going to put Sohan with Wimby, or he's going to pair Wimby at the 4 and Zach Collins at the 5. I mean, he could do a lot of different things. It seems like to me they'd like to play Wimby at the 4 and Collins at the 5, and maybe bring Sohan off the bench. But I mean, they could do a lot of different things. We know they're going to have Trey Jones and Devin Vassell out there. I actually think Devin Vassell could end up being the number one option for the Spurs, but we will see. It's a bold prediction, but through 2 games in the preseason, and it's just preseason, he's averaged more than a point per minute on 72% true shooting. He blocked 4 shots, and he had a 34 player efficiency rating, which is would rank top 3 in the league. So
Yeah.
we will see. We're going to talk a lot about Wimby and Scoot and all the other high draft picks a lot this year because it was a loaded draft. Do you have any other bold predictions? I mean, I know we could talk about this all day. So
Yeah. I guess no, I'll save that for the breakout player segment. I had one, I guess, prediction in mind, but that really falls under breakout players, so I'll save that for then. The other thing I'll say is Cade looks solid. I don't know if the Pistons where they'll really be at in terms of like organizationally, whether they'll be trying to win this year or not, but as long as Cade takes steps forward, that's going to be really good for that organization. And Asar Thompson looks really, really good as well.
here's a bold prediction that I could look really stupid for and say 4 weeks, but I'm going to say it anyway, and that's what bold predictions are. Any prediction involving job security in any sport, is a high wire act above fiery hot lava because you just don't know. But my bold prediction is I don't think we're going to see a coach fired before the All-Star break. That might be a stretch. Let's say before Christmas. I don't think we see a coach fired before Christmas. If you think I'm talking crazy here, Steve Nash last year for the Nets was fired on November 1st. So it seems like every year we have a situation that doesn't start out great. The coach was already kind of on the hot seat, and they pulled the trigger. And that could certainly happen again this year. And if it does, well, this is a moot point. But 13 teams have a coach in either their first or second season. So to me, that would deem them unlikely to be dismissed so quickly. Now, it obviously depends on their situation, but that's almost half the league. You also have 5 other coaches who are in year 3, where the pressure does seem to increase a little bit, except 4 of those clubs are rebuilding and have limited expectations this year. Add all that. You also have, I think guys who are definitely not getting fired. Greg Popovich, who they just signed to an extension. Eric Spoelstra, who's one of the best, if not the best. You got Steve Kerr, who's not getting fired. Michael Malone, who's not getting fired coming off a championship. There are others out there. You add just those teams up, that's 22 of the league's 30 teams that I don't think will be making a coaching change anytime soon. You know, probably not until at least the offseason or after the All-Star break. So I don't know. I mean, there are probably 5 or 6 coaches that could end up getting fired, but I don't. It'd be interesting this year to make a change before Christmas because we've got the little mid-season, in-season tournament that's going to be going on. So I don't know if you want to necessarily make a move during that. I don't know. I don't want to see any coaches fired, but it's certainly. I mean, the NBA gives us its fair share of those storylines every season, so we'll see.
Yeah, definitely. Not really what I was expecting, but definitely an interesting angle there. But we can move on from that point.
Yeah,
Our next segment is going to be who is your breakout player from each conference, and we're going to define the young player as year 3 or younger. So, um, I guess I'll go first since I mentioned who I like that I had someone in particular in mind. Um, I really like Jaden McDaniels for the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think he's going to break out into, I think, first team all defense consideration, which he already was at that level, but um, I think he could even reach, those heights even a step further. Like, I really do think this guy is capable of averaging 15, 16, 17 points per game. Um, he really improved his 3-point shooting last year, and he continues to develop as a scorer, and the talent is all there. So almost in a Kawhi Leonard type of arc, I really do see the potential in his scoring ability taking a big leap.
yeah, he was a guy that I had on my list as well. Anthony Edwards is already cut above the breakout category, in my opinion. He could
Yeah.
improve, but he's not a breakout candidate, I don't think. So McDaniels, I think, for the Timberwolves would be he'd be their obvious. If we were picking a breakout player for each team, he'd be the obvious choice, in my opinion. He's already in that category of one of the best perimeter defenders in the league, or at least he was last year. He didn't make an all defensive team. And he missed the playoffs, unfortunately, with what was a broken hand. But uh, I think there's plenty of room for him to grow. He's been working hard on his offensive game to show that he's more than just some 3-and-D valuable NBA piece on a very good team. If he cuts down on his fouls a little bit, becomes a little more involved offensively, yes, I think it's going to be a major year for him. And he's only 23 years old, so he's barely teetering on his physical prime, if you will. So Jaden Daniels, absolutely. What do you think about a guy like Walker Kessler for the Utah Jazz? He's
Well, I think he's already shown that he's a defensive anchor. I think the question moving forward is just how high can his offensive ceiling go? I think that's really the question, and where can he fit in terms of this big rotation, and will he fit well next to Laurie Markkinen long term or John Collins long term? I mean, they brought in guys, and that front court room is looking um, pretty crowded at the moment. So I do think he's in for another really good year, but in terms of his offensive ability and whether he's going to break out, we'll see on that. I'm not too sure. The next guy I had in mind was Onyeka Okongwu for the Atlanta Hawks. Um, it looks like, as of right now, they're looking at possibly starting Onyeka Okongwu next to Clint Capella. And you can question the spacing all you want, but really, the Hawks have been looking to trade Capella for a while because of Onyeka Okongwu, and I think they decided to keep Clint Capella because of Onyeka Okongwu, and really, it all just comes down to his ability as a versatile defender. He can really just guard any position, almost like a Bam Adebayo esque defender. Um, he still needs to develop as a scorer in the mid range and develop that pick and roll chemistry with Trae Young and DeJounte Murray. But I just think with what he showed on the defensive end of the floor last year, his impact is already so high to where they have to fit him into the starting lineup. I really do believe that, and I think if it means putting Clint Capella on the bench as a sixth man, then so be it.
Yeah, I like that one. Trying to think here. For the Warriors, Jonathan, he's been one of the more interesting players in the league to me, Jonathan Kuminga. I think, obviously the top side of that Warriors rotation, you have 4 future Hall of Famers, obviously. Then you have Andrew Wiggins and Kevon Looney. Those are your known commodities. I think if you're the Warriors, you obviously you brought in Chris Paul too. Kuminga is a 21-year-old. He's had long stretches of high-level basketball, last year, but disappeared from the rotation in the playoffs. Uh, his lack of rebounding and focus have been things that you can nitpick in his game. But he's worked all summer. He said he's going to focus more on rebounding. Draymond Green, to my understanding, is currently dealing with an injury. So if you open that rotation door just a little bit more, he's big, he's young, he's athletic. On a smaller team, I think he has what the Warriors need, what he can provide, but he just has to do it in a sharper, more focused fashion in longer dosage.
Definitely.
So
It's definitely similar to maybe a young Andrew Wiggins type of situation. A little bit different, obviously, because of the opportunity Wiggins had in terms of the shots he could take on that Timberwolves team. But with Kuminga, the thing that I've liked so far in the preseason from him is he's attacking mismatches and really using his size to his advantage. We saw him in the Kings game, and to be fair, that Warriors Kings game did feel like a regular season game. They played their guys up all the way to the end. Even Steph was playing in the fourth quarter, hit a game winner. But Kuminga was attacking switches. We saw him attack De'Aaron Fox on a switch on a little post up, hard dribble left, and then a spin move to the baseline. Those little things are just so big for the Warriors. Just a guy who late in the shot clock is another option you can go to, and just as a physical advantage against most players.
I have one more. Keegan Murray for the Sacramento Kings. Everybody in their organization, according to The Athletic, from their general manager, Monty McNair, to Mike Brown, to De'Aaron Fox, expect him to take a pretty big second-year leap. The second-year product out of Iowa played only 2 games in the California Classic this summer, but in those 2 games, he averaged 35 points, 3 rebounds, 2 blocks, and a steal and a half on 51, 45, 88 shooting splits. He was then chosen to be on the 2023 USA Select team. I think the Kings are going to put him in more positions to create for himself and for others this year. And it's going to be on him to capitalize. But I could see him as a breakout player, breakout young player on a
I
really
think,
good team.
yeah. He's going to be asked to do a lot this year for sure, and that's the thing with the Kings. He's going to be the X factor on that team to decide how well the Kings do this year. Um, and the West got better, and the Kings for the most part were making moves around the edges. They brought back their guys, so the development of Keegan Murray is going to be a really, really huge factor for them. um, I think I'll say one last player,
Okay.
someone that I've been high on for a couple of years now, and that's Evan Mobley. I
Mm-hmm.
think
Mm-hmm.
the Cavs, now that they have a more wing depth, whether they have quality wing play is yet to be seen. I think Max Strus can provide that. I think he was a quality pickup, but another year to develop his offensive game is going to help. And the 3-point shot looks like it has been coming along quite a bit, and that's going to be a big key for this Cavs team. They've struggled with spacing and shooting for a while now, and for Donovan Mitchell, that is a huge part to how effective he was in Utah. Just that spacing of that team, and for all the flaws that Utah had, they did surround their slashing star with really quality shooting, and Cleveland needs to follow suit and do the same.
Absolutely. He's already a finalist for Defensive Player of the Year. He averaged a block and a half at age 21 last year. There's reason to believe he, is going to continue to be a dominant defensive force. Being more consistent offensively is the key. I believe in him. I think, I really like him as a player. There's a reason he was drafted, second overall a couple of years ago. If he gets develops a more consistent and evolved offensive game, he's going to flirt with making his first All-Star appearance in that Eastern Conference. So there are other players that we probably didn't bring up, but I found this to be a really good conversation. You did ask me that one question that I'm still trying to think about.
Yeah, I've thought about it a bit too, and Anthony Edwards was someone that popped in my
That's
head.
the exact that's the exact player I was thinking of. So what if they're like, say they are the 8 seed or the 7 seed, and he's got ridiculous numbers, like say he's putting up
40 points.
35, something along those lines, to be a little bit more realistic. Yeah, I mean, a player like that really will grab the attention of, I think, the media in that situation.
Okay, yeah, I think that really puts a bow on things. Just readdressing that question, and just to reiterate, that question was that I threw out to Michael earlier in the show was, which player would you see winning an MVP in a Russell Westbrook type of scenario where their stats are so ridiculously good to where even as a lower seeded team, they would win an MVP just because they couldn't be denied at that point. And for Anthony Edwards to do it, I think it would mean his assists jump up, his turnovers go down, he takes another step defensively as well. His on ball defense is fantastic. His off ball defense leaves some things to be desired in terms of focus at times. So takes a step there. Already rebounds the ball pretty well for his position. It could happen. I really do think so.
Yeah, we're gonna be doing more of these. I like this burning question format.
Yeah, I do
because it
too.
opens up the conversation. So I think we should do more of these throughout the season. Anything else before we wrap this thing up?
Well, do you want to make a finals prediction?
I mean, I guess why not, right? I mean,
Yeah, might as well.
we're 4 days before the season starts. We're not going to be doing another NBA episode before it starts, so we might as well throw one out there, right?
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy. Did you have one on your mind? I'm going to think a little bit.
Well, really, I guess it's a prediction, but it's also just on my wish list. Bucks and Nuggets. I just think that matchup would just be absolutely ridiculous if we got both of those teams healthy in the finals. I mean, just the matchup of shooting between Jamal Murray and Damian Lillard, and then obviously Jokic and Giannis. With Jokic being the passer that he is, and Giannis being the help defender that he is, that series I just think would be an all timer.
Yeah, it would be. Now that I'm thinking about it. Um, I do think the Bucks will rebound from their first round exit. I think they'll get to the final. They'll find a way to get to the finals. And then in the West, I think that uh,
There's so many teams in the West worth considering. Like it's the conversation out west really becomes interesting because it's all just going to depend on matchups, and obviously it always does, but in the West even more so.
right now I would go Nuggets. Excuse me, Nuggets Bucks, and I think I'd pick. The question is, do the Nuggets go back to back, which not a whole lot of teams have found success doing, or do the Bucks win with their Lillard trade? Uh, I'll go Nuggets.
I
I,
think I'd pick the Bucks. I think just from a pick and roll defense standpoint, I'm not gonna get into a breakdown because this is all hypothetical. But oh man, I think that really puts a bow on things now for the episode. I really enjoyed this one. I even think we could implement this burning questions segment or just format to other sports as well, football,
yeah.
college football.
Mm-hmm.
I really think it really opens things up and makes things flow well. But leave your comment if you agree with us on that and whether you think this is something we should bring into other sports or not, or whatever ideas you have for us. And I'll let Michael sign us off then, I guess.
I think it could also be something we implement into our off-season coverage. For example, baseball is going on right now. It's pretty serious right now with the ALCS and the NLCS. We're going to have the World Series starting a week from tonight. It's Friday, October 20th. World Series starts next Friday night, October 27th. Emmy and I will be doing a World Series preview sometime in the middle of next week once we know the two teams that will be in the World Series. To me, right now, it looks like we're probably getting a rematch of last year with the Astros and the Phillies, but who knows?
We're currently up 5-2 in the bottom of the seventh.
Who is?
Philly is up 5-2 in the
Okay.
bottom of the seventh.
Well, the weird thing is, I say that, but and Philly does look like they'll probably be able to pull their series out. But this Astros Rangers series, the home team has yet to win a ball game. And the Astros have not been the Astros at home, at least in the past month or two. So maybe the Rangers go back to Houston and they're able to force a game 7, and anything can happen in a game 7. My prediction would be I think the Astros get it done in game 6, but we will see.
Yeah.
regardless, I think my point was originally, I got sidetracked. I think burning questions in the offseason for baseball. Like, for example, where is Shohei going to sign?
Yeah, that's the big one.
That's the big burning question that we're gonna have to answer before it actually happens. But there are others too. So we will see. Our burning question segment on Dit Hole are kind of more we kind of have found our niche there with our buy or sell segment, but we will
Yeah.
see what we can do. But yeah, that's gonna wrap it up right around an hour. Thank you to our one viewer. Did we have any comments? I don't think we did.
No, I don't believe so.
Thank you guys for tuning in, though. We really appreciate it. Share this with whoever likes sports. If you enjoyed the content, please like and subscribe. And just like the wait for the NBA to return, we're literally 3 days away now, pretty much. We are gone. Peace.
Peace out.